Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Meghan Henry, and today I'm joined by Tracee Allen. And I'm delighted to have Tracee on. Tracee and I have worked together for a few years now. She is a senior litigation examiner at Namico or Namico Insurance Company. But we're not really here to talk about, we talk a little bit about her current role, but more so of how she got where she was because she started off not in claims at all and, kind of developed some skills in that career that I personally think are crucial to, her experience in claims and her career in claims. She worked in dealing with catastrophic injuries in response to those and has made her way to where she is now, all while being a single mom. So I think her story is inspiring and interesting, and I think you'll enjoy it too. So with that, I'll bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Tracee. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. How are you today?
I am well. I made it in. We were having some icy rain this morning, but I made it in safely. So,
are you? Yeah, we just had a storm over the weekend. Like last week was one of these weeks that the kids had late openings multiple days and they didn't have school on Friday. So yesterday was like the Monday of all Mondays, like getting everyone out on time. I felt like I had been in a boxing match by the time everyone got on the bus. I was like,
yeah.
And then to add insult to injury, my oldest one then I got a call from the nurse like 2 hours later that she was having a stomach ache and I had to pick her up. And I was like, or were you just not ready for the school weekend?
That's happened before. My son just happened to be sick right after I took you. But I mean, I'm sure she was really sick. My son wasn't.
She was fine. She seemed just fine laying on the couch all afternoon. But yes, I think she needed a little more time to ease into the week. I get it. Don't we all need like I feel like when you have those long weekends, it's just so hard to get back into the swing of things. And I was even saying the week before when they were having the delayed openings make the mornings go so much smoother because I can still get up and do my things, and I just like getting them up and out the door just doesn't have that big rush to it anymore.
That's true.
But we're not here to talk about the weather.
No, ma'am.
Well, Tracee, I'm so glad that you joined me. You and I have worked together for a while now, but you have an amazing backstory that I was so grateful that you were willing to share it because I think you're amazing. You're amazing, and I think everyone should know how amazing Tracee is. But before we like really dig in, because part of the story is your background. You are in claims now, but you didn't start off in claims, and you started at a really interesting. I think really interesting career of you're a 911 operator.
I was, but even before that, so I don't know where me wanting to be an attorney came from, but I've always wanted to be an attorney. So when I went to college, I did my first 2 years at Purdue, and then I finished at Ball State. But my senior year, I changed my mind. I'm like, what do I do? So I ended up going to Atlanta because a friend was there. And even before I landed on being a 911 operator, I think I was a secretary, I was a collection agent, I did retail, I was a waitress. And then I became a 911 operator.
Well, so as a collections agent, that has to be just a terrible job.
It is. I think I was there for maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah. My dad was in the car industry, and he started off being like the repo man, which is also terrible. You understand like why things need to happen, but then you feel for that when you're taking individual's vehicle,
Yeah.
albeit because they haven't paid.
Mhm.
But there's reasons behind it typically,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. And I try to take away something out, out of every job I've had. And that is where I learned that if you just talk to the collection agent, stop avoiding their calls. Stop, just talk to them. Say, hey, you're either going to get what I can give you or let's make some arrangements. It's just when people like ignore them that
Mhm.
it becomes like harassing. So
Yeah.
luckily there's laws against that now of collection agents harassing people. So
Well, so let me ask you this though. So you said you wanted to be an attorney for as long as you can remember. So what do you remember what made you like make the change that you're like, "Oh, maybe I don't want to do this?"
so I did an internship, I believe it's called the Washington Center in Washington, DC.
Mhm.
And you can get like an internship on the Hill,
Mhm.
the White House. So I chose my internship with a defense attorney. So I was like, if I'm having doubts now, let me make sure it's not what I want to do. So I did it with her, and she was just this fiery, short, redhead lady. She was just amazing, but took me to court one day, and it was kind of cool. I don't know if you remember, is it Murder on 1600 with Wesley Snipes, where
Mhm.
there's a
Yeah.
murder at the White House? So I was there when they were filming that, and I got to walk through the set, and I met Wesley, and I was all giddy. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Just
He
like
was
being an
like,
attorney. That's like
"Hi."
every other day.
Yeah. So that was one perk. But that day we went to court. It was a sentencing hearing, and the guy was sentenced. I can't remember this, but his girlfriend with the baby was behind me and his mother.
Mhm.
When the judge handed down the sentence, all I heard was screaming, and then I felt the purse go by my head
Oh,
because
no.
she threw it at the judge. So I was like, um, so they're going crazy, and I'm just like, give me the baby, just give me the baby.
No.
So I'm like, I don't think I could, handle this on a regular basis, but I found myself in the middle of trying to care for a baby I didn't know because they were, upset and crying and yelling at the judge. So it was just something I just knew I didn't want to be a part of. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, I can understand that, but because that's, I mean, difficult, and it
Yeah,
just as a individual, it's difficult, even though someone may have made some poor choices, and
yeah. But it
they,
affects the family too. Then
yeah,
people don't think about that. It's not just your life; you're ruining other people's lives.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, how explain or tell me how you then and or how did you end up going into being a 911 operator? Because I think because you're such a compassionate person, so that must have been like I could like see you doing it, but very hard on you mentally. But I could see you like
It
really
was, it
listening.
was. But that's where I got my thick skin from. I would not have been able to do claims without a thick skin. But I don't remember how I came across that. I think it just sounded interesting. We were a part of the police department, which was cool, you know. But I've always wanted to help people. So when I got on the floor, um, it was pretty hard. I'm from Indiana, and even though people think I am from the South because of the way I talk, but trying to hear the callers and understand them, it wasn't easy because it's just we talk different region to region. So, but uh, the interesting thing about that is that yes, I had some pretty important phone calls that kind of changed my life. Some traumatic, some dealing with death. But the one, of course, that I did deliver a baby
Wow,
over
really?
the phone. Yeah, it was a 14-year-old, and her mother called, and she was like, she's in labor, and she was just hysterical. And she's like, okay, I gotta get off the phone. I gotta get dressed. I said, no, no, no. You can't get dressed now. You have to, attend to your daughter. And so she just kept going on about the nightgown she had on. I was like, okay, the baby's more important. So I gave her instructions on how to, she had to take off her pants and things like that. And as soon as she did, she's like, oh my God, a head full of hair. Here it comes. And so the baby did come out, and I heard it cry. And EMS got there like right after that. But that was pretty amazing.
So, I mean, how does the training work for that? Like, like how, because clearly you had not done that before. So
no. So yeah, and then back then, so this was 90, I think 98 or 97 or something like that. I can't remember. We had a lot of training, like I think probably at least a few months, but it's a triage system. We have a triage book. You get the call, and depending on what their answers are, will you go on into the triage, or do you, do you hang up? Do you stay on the line? Do you transfer it to someone else? So there was just a triage book that we had to learn. And of course, you had to learn it and know what to do, what page to go to, because, they're having an emergency. They don't have time for you to be flipping through a book. Wait a minute, I gotta go to page 2. No, page 15. No. So it wasn't none of that. You had to really know your stuff. So, and I believe it was like color coded, it had tabs, so it was easy to maneuver. But yeah, so that was pretty interesting. I was very good at it. I can say that the numbers proved it. I took the most calls, was on the calls less time, and I can't remember what else we were measured on, but I got picked to develop the SOP, the standard operating procedures for Fulton County 911, and because they didn't have one. I'm like, why don't you have an SOP? So that was pretty cool that we got to work on that project together.
So what did you find? And I'm gonna stick with this for a little bit because I'm just fascinated by it. But like, what are some of I'm sure there's like just common calls you get all the time that you're like, my goodness, why are they calling 911 about this?
Well, yeah. One thing that kind of made me upset was this lady called about a car being driven by a Black man, but it had South Dakota plates. And she's like, I'm from South Dakota. I don't know. I mean, it was just, I was like, ma'am, this is not an emergency. Goodbye. So I hung up on her, but I told my supervisor right away, if she calls back complaining, this is what I did, and I stand by it. I'm not going to entertain any of that stuff. Mostly people, I mean, they call just like you hear on the radio. I did get some calls about a robbery in progress. I mean, a lot of car accidents, of course, but some people just want to talk.
Yeah.
There are some older people that will call and just want to talk to you. And so sometimes that's okay if the lines are clear, like, because we could see, of course, on the board whether or not we had calls coming in, anything waiting, people off on their breaks. So you don't have time to, have personal discussions with.
Yeah. like would you have like regulars, like people would call like frequently to be like, oh, I want to talk to Tracee today?
I remember a couple of people. I remember it was an older man, but and so we had to learn the police codes for a lot of things, and 24 was, I believe it was 24, like a person maybe with mental health issues and things like that. So we would get calls from them a lot because they just, want to talk, or they say something off that we don't understand anything they're talking about, but we have to listen to the call to determine whether or not we need to disconnect or actually take action. So Yeah.
Yeah, and like I imagine, because you have to take every call very seriously, and
Oh
then
yeah.
kind of like triage through it, being like, okay, like almost put it in like categories of buckets. Like, okay, is
Right.
this like a super emergency? Is this like light? Like
Mhm.
that's how I would imagine. It's almost like you have like levels of
Oh
urgent.
yeah. Yeah. And one thing that we did change there was that, you hear 911, what is your emergency? And we changed it to where. That's the first question that we ask, because sometimes you don't get a chance to ask where you are because they're talking about the emergency. And we're like, we got to confirm where you are, even though it comes up on the monitor where you're calling from.
Got it.
So the first important question is, where is your emergency? And so I thought that was a great idea, because if you can only imagine people that call and are in distress, they don't
Yeah.
really get around to telling you where they are. And then they end up hanging up, or, unfortunately get involved in some traumatic physical confrontation or something. So, yeah.
Um. So, how long did you do that for?
I think almost 2 years. I
Okay.
think almost 2 years.
And did you segue from that into claims, or did you?
Yes, because of course at that time, like, I didn't have a plan after college. I planned not to go to law school, so my plan, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was always looking for more money, and I went to a job fair, and Progressive Insurance was there. That was my first job.
Hmm.
So yeah, and at that time, Progressive just um, was just very popular with their immediate response vehicle, all the cool commercials and all that. And I believe they were a sponsor of the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
um, maybe a year after I started. So um, there was a lot going on with Progressive that was exciting. So
Um.
yeah.
So you started at Progressive,
Mhm.
what sort of claims were you handling when you were there? Was it
Well,
the
so
auto
I
claims?
was actually, I wasn't handling claims. I was handling tow claims, but I was actually a dispatcher.
Okay.
So I was taking in, I would set up the claims and then assign them to the adjusters. And of course, the adjusters also worked outside, in the IRV. They would to make the visits. So I would dispatch them, saying, "Hey, here's your next claim. We need an immediate response to this." Okay, So I was like kind of like a dispatcher, and it
Yeah.
wasn't until and I felt like I wasn't going anywhere, so that's how I ended up going to another insurance company. So I would handle like tow claims, rental claims, little stuff.
But I
So
kind of see like the segue from going from like 911 to that, like it kind of like there's some translatable skills, I think,
oh
there,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? So you're still kind of dealing with people in distress and,
oh
managing
yeah,
that. So, um, I understand like kind of how that could have segued in, but I also understand why you're like, okay, like I don't see my upwards.
and I'm pretty. I wouldn't say I'm that ambitious, but I just knew that this I need to make some progress faster. So I landed on the Hartford, and the Hartford had a substandard company, the Hartford Omni in Atlanta. And that's where I really got into a lot of claims and claims handling and um, my initial experience in claims and stuff like that.
Um, and eventually you moved on to being on a CAT team, right? And doing catastrophic response.
Yeah, in trucking, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so
Mhm.
because you and I were talking about this, and this is like a huge part of your story that I find fascinating because you move over to another company, you're dealing with catastrophic trucking claims the whole time being a single mom, right?
Yes. Yes. When I first started at that company, my son was 2.
Mhm.
And so I had to make sure before I accepted the job that my family was on board, because that job was in Bloomington, Indiana, which is like an hour south of Indianapolis, Indiana. And but a part of the job, being a part of the emergency response team, was that you had 1 hour to get to our plane. So if you're assigned to this catastrophic loss, you had 1 hour to get your stuff together and get to the plane, the local airport, because we had our own Learjet to fly to our places in our territory. So I would get the call, and I'm just like, can't talk to anybody until I get a sitter for my child. So luckily, I met one of my sorority sisters at that job, and her husband helped me a lot, and my parents. So that was the only way I could do that job. And so
Yeah.
I had to make sure he was taken care of, who's going to pick him up, who's going to feed him until I get back. So, and sometimes I had to stay overnight, where I
Yeah.
was. So, yeah.
And like I can imagine the stress involved with
Mm-hmm.
with that too. Like you literally have I mean, I know you're on call, so you have to be somewhat prepared that you're going to
Right.
get a call.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's many times when you're on call you get no calls, right?
Yeah. Well, that was very rare for me, but it just seems like I just had the worst luck. Like, so we were on call 1 week when I first started, maybe every 7 weeks, which is a lot.
Hmm.
That's a lot. So, you know, uh, it seemed like I was going out at least twice a week, sometimes three. And so I just had bad luck like that. And then some people that don't get called out a lot at all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, like your son is an adult now. Do you like what have you talked to him about like what he remembers from that time? Does he remember anything about it or when and what does he remember? Cuz it could have been fun for him being like, "Oh, I get to go see auntie, so and so or I get to be with Grammy or
Well, as time went on, my on-call pickup list got longer. So, like, the friends that he had, their parents helped me a lot. So I know when it was all said and done, I may have had 10 people on the list that I could call to
Mhm.
go get him. So in that aspect, he thought it was fun. Oh, I get to go over such and such house tonight and play
Yeah.
with their dog and, do things like that. But there were other times where I do remember being called away on Christmas evening. And I'm like, I don't understand why. Because what I did could have waited till the next morning.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they only called me to go to New York. They called me at like 7 p.m. And by the time I got there, all I did was go to the hotel. So I could have slept at home
Yeah.
and then left like 4 or 5 o'clock in the next morning. So
Yeah.
it just, that happened a lot. So it was just a couple of times where I felt like me leaving my son was unnecessary.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Yeah, and that's like that's so hard on you too because you're doing
Mhm.
it for for your family, but then you're losing time with your family on some like
Yeah.
very key, you know, dates. And I know it is whatever you make of every day and all of that, but still, like it's Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You only
mean,
get
yeah.
so many of them.
Oh yeah. I couldn't take that anymore. Well, it took 16 years to figure out that I couldn't take it
Yeah.
anymore.
I'm like,
But
it wasn't a short stay for you.
no.
Um, so, in in the response to these cat calls though, like what were some things that you really had to that you noticed or you had to you have to deal with catastrophic accidents, you're dealing with truck drivers involved in catastrophic
Mhm.
accidents, and I'm sure in that you're pulling in all your prior experience of having to manage these traumatic events. um
Yeah. Yeah. So our priority for going to the scene, and we only responded to either fatal or catastrophic injuries. Um, so, most of the time we're going out, someone has passed away. So, and our main objective is to meet with our truck driver. to make sure that evidence is secure. We interview them, get the paperwork, because, and of course, a lot of them are away from home. They're
Mhm.
states away from home, and all they care about is getting home, but we got to keep them there. So that's a task. And then some drivers, regardless if it's their fault or not, they're still human. So they're traumatized, crying.
Mhm.
And so we're having to be counselors, mothers,
Mhm.
you know, and all the while try to remain professional. So just one thing I always told them is, I'm here to start the investigation, secure the evidence that will help us defend you, however this shakes out. But we don't want you to have to worry about this part of the claim. We want you to be able to go home and decompress and deal with what happened with your family. So just give me this hour of your time. Let me do my job and then you go home. So that was not easy.
No, I
So,
mean, because I mean, after just being involved in any accident after the fact, people are shaken up.
yeah.
Now you have an added layer of being a catastrophic or fatality,
Mhm.
um, and I can. I mean, I've seen it. The how those drivers are. I mean, that sometimes they're in shock. Sometimes they shut
Mhm.
down. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Like, or sometimes they're inconsolable. Like you know. So again, you're pulling in these counselor
Yeah.
problem solver skills to come in
Yeah.
and and kind of also being a mom, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Because there's a lot of young drivers on the road, a lot of young truck drivers that just trying to make a paycheck and they don't have a lot of life experience. So, um, yeah, it's pretty hard. So,
um, from that experience, though, I mean, was there anything that you noticed or picked up on from like this, like responding to the scenes of things that you're like, almost like better practices, ideas for like drivers, be like, maybe we
oh
should
my gosh,
implement these
I
changes or
had
this.
before I left that company, um, I was trying to get a meeting with the safety department because, of course, the safety department is who traveled out to our insured trucking companies and went over whatever safety guidelines or requirements they needed to meet, for their policies. And so I just had all these ideas. So, like, especially like, at that time, more and more drivers were getting dash cameras,
Hmm.
but some of them thought they couldn't afford them. And so, like, I had started looking up dash cameras that were affordable and things like that. And also, once you're in an accident, if you don't have a camera, if it's safe to get out your truck, snap a picture of the placement of the vehicles and get back in your truck and then move off to the side of the road. Just something as simple as that. Because, of course, right after an accident, the placement of the vehicles are very important.
Yeah.
So, to the investigation. So, no, I had a whole list of things and I was trying to get a meeting. So, I'm like, if you just do these little things, it would make our job so much easier. So,
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of it's instinctive, right? Like you don't want to be blocking a road or you want to pull off to the side, and
mhm.
sometimes like they, you know, not that they don't think, but they're not thinking about that aspect
Yeah.
of it. They're just thinking of, okay, I was in an accident, I need to call my supervisor, I need to move this tractor trailer to the side, I'm blocking, and that's why they need professionals like yourself to be like, okay, this should be in, this is the safety protocol response manual of how you
Yeah.
respond if an event were to happen. Because I see it on my side too, when sometimes you're lucky enough to be there,
Yeah.
at the scene, and but most times you're not, and then you're looking back and you're piecing together the
Yeah.
accident. Then you have
Of
an
course.
expert come in piecing together the
Hmm.
accident.
Hmm.
And when things are moved or changed, it's sometimes can
Yeah.
really really hurt the litigation side of things.
Yeah. 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 And then also, as humans, we want to apologize and,
Hmm.
go console the other party, or, I mean, even just in regular accidents, not all catastrophic accidents, but um, there's a way to show empathy without admitting liability. And so I just think like that should be a part of safety and coaching of these drivers, how to manage your emotions on the scene if you can. We're all human, but and then how to manage others, because you have people, other drivers, witnesses that are hostile towards truck drivers, and they don't feel safe. So a lot of times they don't get out of their trucks. So it's a lot they go through. I have a lot of respect for truck drivers.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy job. It can
Mhm.
be a very lonely job too. And and they're driving giant vehicles. You
Yeah,
know?
thousands of pounds without cargo.
Yeah, with it, yes, exactly. Then load it up, and it's it's even harder. And then a lot of times driving in very desolate places, though, too.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of accidents don't occur in the city. It's usually way out in rural areas. So, yeah.
Um, but so, but was there anything that that like looking back now that you're like you mentioned like taking the photograph if you don't have the dash cam or whatever, like anything looking back that you're like, oh, these were some best practices that I saw to be beneficial, or that I thought are things that should be implemented in when you're in a catastrophic type accident.
Well, of course, that would vary from the situation,
Mhm.
because it's all up to the driver and what he can handle. And of course, you have to be respectful. Like if it's a fatal accident, you don't want to. A lot of our drivers just say, "Oh, I just stayed back," or a witness went up to. I just let the witness handle it. They didn't want to, see the bodies or see what they have done. Even if it's not their fault, they feel responsible. So I just think that they're given protocols that they have to do, of course, but and then also from a Department of Transportation standpoint, they know they're about to be under a lot of scrutiny and
Yeah. Hmm.
inspections and stuff like that. So I don't know. Just from all those years working with them, it's like nothing will fit every driver on what they should do in those situations.
Yeah.
So I just think that if they just learn to be aware of this, the environment that they're in after this accident, the people who are around, and if you are able to just take notes or mental notes of the environment,
Hmm.
because that's important too, and then start thinking about what the chain of events were that led to the impact, and sometimes try to get that down in your mind before all the chaos,
Yeah.
because pretty much when the police arrive, they're, it just takes a whole nother direction. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one thing that I've taken note of with defending these these types of accidents is the importance of um like making sure all your pre-ride checks are done and documented and consistently. and, and that you have all of the things you're supposed to have in the vehicle, like you have the manuals, you have your
Mhm.
logs, these things which I know most of the probably 9 times out of 10 they're there, but the one time that they're not,
Of
it can
course.
prove to be very problematic. Even if it's a non-issue, it then a skilled plaintiff's
Yeah.
attorney is going to make that an issue.
Yeah. Especially the logs. And
Yeah.
now I believe they're all electronic, or most of them, that have the capability of being electronic. They don't have, their truck isn't that old, but the logs are the main thing. You just have some people who just don't know how to do their logs. And then you see a lot of bad editing to the logs. So, and you get caught every time because it's very obvious. And when they start matching that up with, if you have GPS on your truck and
Yeah.
receipts, and, so it's just best not to fudge on those. So,
No. Well,
at all.
and especially now that, now everything is so digital that
Mhm.
you can't really like fudge it. I think when things were more on paper in the old
Mhm.
days.
Yeah, and that's all I remember. It's like paper logs.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it still is, or it's like on tablets that's like,
Mhm.
transposed or, transferred to paper logs, but like you use the tablet to do all the checks. But, it, I've just found in defending these cases, anything that just, even if the smallest little thing, if that
Right.
step was skipped in that instant, that then becomes an issue,
Yeah.
whether or not it had nothing to do with the accident at all. Uh,
Mhm.
it'll be used as an inference that, well, this wasn't done, then
Right.
then maybe this wasn't done either.
And of course, another important thing, you talk about a driver's mental state after those things, and they just want to get home, or they just trying to gather themselves. Well, you still got to go get a drug and alcohol test within a certain period of time. And so a lot of times, by the time I get to the scene, um, those deadlines have expired. So it's like, what do you do with
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Mhm.
because the inference right there is going to be, well, you know, there must have been something going on if they didn't have the test in time. Like I can already picture it.
Yep. Yep.
Like,
Yep. So yeah, we had a bad accident. It was a fatality in Maryland. I don't know if it was close to Baltimore. And so Maryland's a contributory negligence state, right?
yeah,
1%
yeah,
bars
100%.
recovery. Well, so it was totally the other guy's fault. Um, but our driver went partying the night before and had marijuana in the system.
Mhm.
So I believe they ended up like trying to hurry up and settle that before all that came out.
Yeah.
So even though it wasn't his fault, and there was good defenses, liability defenses, I mean, that we could prove 1%, negligence, they just still settled it because they didn't want our driver's drug test to come out. So
Well, yeah, and that, I mean, I can just imagine the publicity that could be
yeah,
associated with that. That could be, detrimental to the company. And
yeah.
you don't necessarily want that out there either.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and I mean, even I mean, I'm not a toxicologist, but you know, I think that stays in your system for some time. It could have even been
It
like
does.
weeks
Yeah,
before,
several
but
weeks. Mhm.
but looking at it from like a trial attorney standpoint, like that, you're gonna blow that up.
Yep. They did not care that she went to a party 3 weeks ago. It's still in your system. So.
um, now, did you ever experience an incident though that perhaps the driver had been engaging in some of that activity, like not far away from the incident, that could have impacted it?
Oh goodness. I don't think I have come across anything specific to that, but
Good.
I did have a couple. I did have like this one driver that stands out that was hostile towards me and
Hmm.
was uncooperative, and I'm like, well, what are you covering up? What don't you want me to know? And I had to convince him, like, I'm on your side. I'm here to try to, you
Hmm.
know, um, make sure that whatever evidence we need, or if even if you have something adverse or something that's going to hurt you, you need to tell me now so that we can get in front of it and know how to address it. And of course, like most of the times, defense counsel has already been dispatched to. They'll
Yeah.
come to the scene, and kind of talk to the drivers, because they represent the drivers. So
Yeah.
um, that sometimes helped with these type of drivers that are uncooperative and you think they're covering up,
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah. I mean, I would think having, counsel there is a layer of protection and helpfulness for the driver too, that they feel like they could be insulated a little bit because you can talk to their attorney under, attorney client privilege. However, I could also see how it could hurt in a way, that maybe the driver's not so on board with talking to this other individual, and they
mhm,
might not understand the complexities of the investigation and
right.
what's going on, and it might even cause more hostility. So I could see
Mhm.
it kind of cutting both ways.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um so so again, during this whole time, during these 16 years, you start this when your son is 2, you do it
Yeah,
all the way till basically he's graduating, high school.
yeah.
Um, you know, I know we talked about when he was younger, but as he grew older, did he like gain like this appreciation to, everything that you were doing and, you know, the importance of your job, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. But he still didn't understand why they were sending me out at night and
Yeah.
overnight. So, and of course, as he got older, um, I wanted to, I needed to keep an eye on him. He is a young boy, growing up and the internet, the games, the Xbox, playing with strangers online, things like that
Right.
that I had to also manage. But he, when I wasn't around, of course, some kids take advantage of that. Say, hey, this is free time for me to do, you know, little things that maybe my mom wouldn't appreciate. So I
Yeah.
had growing pains too, just like any other parent.
Yeah.
But no, now you can tell that he appreciated what I did and some, sacrifices I made to do that job. And in 2015, I got breast cancer, so that was hard on him too. And he had to watch his favorite teacher go through that too at the same time.
Oh,
So
so yeah.
it was hard on him, very hard.
Yeah.
But I continued to work during that time. So
Really? Wow.
mhm. Yeah, so that was one thing about my job. I guess with most jobs, like if you work most of the day, like 4 hours, that you don't have to take leave for the 3.5 hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, when you in with chemotherapy, you don't get sick until like 2 days later. So I would get uh, chemo on Thursday afternoon. I work Thursday morning,
Mhm.
chemo Thursday afternoon, work all day Friday, be sick all weekend, and come back to work Monday. So I never missed any work. So I'm grateful that they worked with me on that, so I wouldn't have to,
Yeah.
take so much leave of absence until I
But that
needed
must have been hard on him too, though, because
to. Hmm.
you'd be sick on the weekends too, which is a lot of
Yeah,
the time that you probably would have together, and um, I'm sure he
and
had to
that's
take a little bit of caretaker role too, which is
yeah,
wonderful and great, and but still hard for a teenager too.
yeah, and but that was at a time where I think he also became a little distant because I would tell him, "Well, mommy's not well enough to look out for you, so no, you can't go outside." I had to start limiting his activities because I couldn't take care of him.
Yeah.
So um, he probably was a little resentful for
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say I'm so happy that you made it through all that. I mean, you're I feel like your story is just inspiring because you've had a lot of challenges and have pushed through them all. Um, so and I lost my train of thought, which doesn't happen. Well,
Sorry.
actually, it happens all the time. Um, but during that time though, during that like teenage time when you're
Mhm.
away, like, were there ever times that you like, caught him or his friends trying to be like sneaky, trying to get away with stuff while you
Of
were out
course,
of town?
of course. Because I come home late and I'm like, where are you? So there's a nice little app called Life 360.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think it was like when he got to be like a sophomore and he got a cell phone that I'm like, you have to keep your location on to, you know,
Yeah.
give me a peace of mind while I'm not there. Um, but he was a good boy. He was good. He was a good kid. He just, like every teenager, you got those temptations. And if you're not around, a lot to catch them, you kind of got to do some backhanded,
Yeah.
you catch it on the back end and try to fix it later. But yeah.
I mean, I remember that from growing up. Like, you knew whose house, the parents worked longer, that, no one was home, and
Mhm.
you knew where you could go in the afternoon
And that was
if
my
you get in
house
trouble.
for
Yeah.
his friends. They was like, your mom's out of town. Okay. I'm going over to DJ's house.
And that's hard as a parent though too, because you want to hope, like, okay, first of all, teenagers are going to make poor choices. You just hope they don't make terrible choices. They're going to have to make some poor choices and learn from them. But you also don't want them to get involved with the wrong crowd and just take a turn in the wrong direction, all while, like, it's not like you're off, gallivanting and, leaving him to his own devices. Like, you're trying to you're off because you're away because you're trying to provide for your family, not because
Oh
you're
yeah.
like, on a girls trip, or or
Right.
can't be bothered. So it's a hard balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I got no breaks. I've never experienced sending him off for the summer with a family member. He was with me every day of his life.
Mhm.
So um yeah, I don't even know what that feels like.
Yeah. But I think I would think though, looking back though, you're probably grateful for all that too.
You know,
You
we're awfully close, and I think he respects me, which is a great thing to
Mhm.
get from a teenager. So yeah, yeah, things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um so but you eventually did, take a make a change and leave, leave this position, and I imagine because you probably wanted some more, not stability, but like
Hmm.
constant, just not moving, maybe.
Yes. So yeah, I truly only stayed in Bloomington until he graduated,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to leave that position without finding one doing something different. It made no sense to me to go to another company and handle trucking claims. Like it that never made sense to me to
Right.
job hop to the same thing. So if I was going to leave, it was going to be for something different. And so when I got the opportunity, I wasn't even looking for a job. Someone called me about this position in professional liability, and so I appreciate them. That's one thing that I tell my son is like, you have to um, care about the relationships that you build, that you damage, that you um, cut off, whatever, because you never know, when those people that you've had those issues with may be important later. So
Yeah.
um, I just firmly believe in not burning bridges, and not that I had a bridge to burn with this person, but she just told me that I was nice to her while we worked together, and she thought about me when she found this job. So
Yeah.
she called me. So that made me feel good that um, I'm adding value to those
Yeah.
relationships that I build. So, so people will in turn think about me for opportunities. So
Yeah. But I think the key is there, though. You're adding value not with the expectation of getting
yeah.
something back, but
Oh
just
no.
because you
Yeah.
want to add value, and I
Oh,
think that's the difference. Like, you're not in
mhm.
it for something, you're just doing it from the goodness of your own heart. You're a kind, caring, nice person, and it all just comes around.
Yeah, that's important to me. Every day I try to be a good person. Every day you know, it's just no reason to be anything else. It's really not.
Yeah.
Even when someone does something against you, just remove yourself from that situation if you can. Remove
Yeah.
yourself from that person.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So, but how was the pivot for you though from, trucking and dealing with these, catastrophic claims then to pivot over to professional liability, which, you know, is similar but very different. I mean, there's
Mhm.
similarities, but first of all, you've cut out the response, the cat response,
Yes.
but the nature of the claims is very, very different.
Mhm.
And but still has a big emotional aspect to them. So,
It
how was that
does.
transition for you?
It does. So, the bulk of our claims are dealing with bad faith
Hmm.
and of insurance companies. So, the thing that I did as an adjuster was try to, handle claims, manage claims in good faith, to make reasonable offers, to make sure denials were, um, I guess, factually based and had merit, and you had the support for it, things like that. That you had good customer service, that you, even if you're giving bad news to a policyholder, do it and just get it over with. So, those things that I see on this end, um, you know, why did bad faith, why is bad faith even being alleged?
Hmm.
Um, I'm like, okay, did you tell the insured A, B, and C? Did you tell them this may be an issue or a challenge or an exclusion or whatever it is? Were you just honest with them? Were you upfront with them? And, and then when they send you information, did you act upon it or did you just leave it on your desk and thought ignoring it would make it disappear? So it's just ironic that I'm on this end of it with those claims, and it's I'm finding that the experience I had at the prior company is helping me do this job. I
Yeah.
mean, I gained a lot of experience negotiating, investigating, people skills, um, team building, some training, and things like that with the prior job that's helping me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think your whole career has been developing those people skills and response skills just in
Mhm.
slightly different ways that kind of almost culminates to where you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also been difficult because, as you can tell, I don't have the most forceful voice. So, I'm calling people sounding like this little girl from the South, trying to tell big, CEOs and presidents of the company why they should pay a claim they are totally against paying,
Hmm.
or the issues that they have with the situation that may blow up into something worse. Even with the truck drivers, like, why are you, or trucking companies, because I would talk to the safety directors and things like that, and just getting all the pushback, you
Hmm.
know, and I've been in some uncomfortable situations while out in the field because I've been in areas that didn't welcome people that look like me.
Right.
So it's it's really all about, knowing that you have the talent and the abilities to do your job. And if other people don't want to get on board with that, that's fine. I know how to remain professional, but yet get my point across.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I just made an insured mad at me yesterday, and I'm like, okay, sorry. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah, and like, look, I actually think it is a, a bonus that you have such a nice affect that you can have a thick skin and be stern, and you have a nice
Mhm.
delivery to it, that sometimes it makes the blow a little bit easier. I think that sometimes the bulldog mentality, I think, doesn't always work. I
Yeah.
mean, I like to akin myself to kind of to how you are when I deal with opposing counsel. I'm not in
Mhm.
it to just argue and fight with them,
Yeah.
like that. I don't think that gets us anywhere. I mean, sure, there's a time and a place for it, of course,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, we don't need to come in like, claws out, ready to,
Mhm.
ready to
Mhm.
fight. Um, and
Yeah.
that more approachable, nicer affect, I personally think gets you further along in life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are plenty of people who might disagree with me, but that's my view.
Yeah. I I've always been like a compromiser. I'm very gray. I don't think everything's black and white, and kind of see both sides. And even when I have something difficult to say, I usually try to start out with something positive. Like even getting an email from someone that I know we're about to have a conflict, I'm like, well, thank you for your email, but but so there's just a way to approach that you can stand by um, what you believe in, and try to get the job done without uh, taking any kind of insults or whatever personally. It's hard to not take it personally. So I'm an emotional person, but I know at the end of the day, if it's a situation where I didn't do anything wrong, that keeps me kind of grounded.
Yeah. And like, I think you've also built up this, you know, thicker skin, so to speak, that, over the years of having to have a lot of difficult conversations and experiences.
Yeah.
Um, Although I can imagine being where you are now, if someone is, you know, questioning like your assessment or your ability, that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, give them their options and make them make the decision and live with the consequences.
Yeah.
That's my motto. Like, I can only advise you, but in our business, you just kind of got to let things unfold. I mean, you give uh, insurance or whomever advice
Hmm.
that you that's expected of you, but if they make a choice that lead to other consequences, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah. And look, I think in every aspect, like from when you were a 911 operator versus responding to the catastrophic claims, like you're dealing with high emotions.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
when dealing with high emotions, you need to not have the high emotions to bring
exactly.
everyone down.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not to say that I don't take stuff home.
Mhm. Sure.
Um, especially like at my previous job, when I was getting called out a lot. Um, I'm like, why is everybody dying on my time? Like,
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
I was just emotional for a while. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God, and that, you know, that He puts you in places that you need to be. And maybe it was meant for me to be there at that time with that driver, helping him, whatever. But it was just mentally draining on me too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
after I went home, I'm like, what just happened? What did I see? You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you can't really talk about it.
can't really talk
So you just have to
because
kind of like sit in your soup, and that's like not always fun.
not at all.
So did you what did you do to help yourself through that? Like, do you journal, or like, I mean, how did you help yourself process through it?
I don't think I did.
Oh,
I
so you
just
just
was.
sat in your
I
soup?
feel like my went. No, like it was such a it's just so heavy all the time. And I don't and that coupled with being a single mom, I didn't have time for myself.
Yeah.
And so now, turning the page, doing a different direction in professional liability, I'm finally, and my son is grown,
Hmm.
doing his thing. I'm finally getting back to what I care about or what I like to do, which I don't even know what I like to do because I haven't done anything for so long. So it's just weird. It's weird that, to let go of all that heaviness and to
Mm-hmm.
actually have free time to myself. I don't even know what to do.
I don't know. A lot of people play pickleball. Maybe you should play pickleball.
No. Yeah. I do need
I
a hobby.
I understand though. I mean, it just from, when you go from, spending so much of your time like concentrating on your career and then young children and like just you put it all into all the other things.
Yeah.
You often just forget about, yourself and I struggle with it all the time. Like
Mhm.
I used to have hobbies, but I'm like, who has time for hobbies? I don't know. I, I'm actually making it this year. I'm like, I said I'm gonna just take more time just to read, for
Yeah.
pleasure, not
Mhm.
not for any intellectual purpose,
Yeah.
just for just pleasure. I'm not. We're 3 weeks and I'm doing a terrible job at it, so I need to do better. But it's like that same idea. Like we should feel guilty about carving out time every day for
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
ourselves. Otherwise, you
Mhm.
lose. Kind of like you get a little lost.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Well, I encourage you to try to find something for yourself. I don't know what it is.
I'm trying, maybe.
Crocheting. I don't know.
Well, my mom bought me a sewing machine 2 years ago, and she's like, "Do you even get out the box?" I was like, "Well, I got it out the closet and put it on the table, but it's still
There
in
you
the
go.
box."
Well,
So I'm
that's.
gonna get it out. I'm gonna start sewing, I think.
I think that's a amazing step one. Let
Just
me know.
getting it out in front of you to see it, and then maybe you'll open the box.
I do want you to email me when you take it out of the box. And then,
Oh,
like, when you get your first pattern of what you're going to make. Maybe start with a scrunchie. That's
I
what we did
got it. I got
in
the
seventh grade.
pattern. I got the pattern. I got the material. I got
Okay.
everything.
You're well
Just
on your way.
haven't opened the box.
um, well, Tracee, we were just about out of time, but
Mm.
before we close up, um, this is something I ask of most of my guests. Like knowing what you know now and where you are, what advice would you give young Tracee when she's graduating college and deciding law school's not for me? What advice would you give her?
Well, I don't have any regrets because, you know, things happened the way they were supposed to happen. The only thing I wish I would have, we didn't get into this, but I did have a short stint in web development. Like I left insurance to go do the .com thing and web development. And because I was self-taught by this guy in the computer lab at college, like he taught me how to code by, HTML, whatever. But I wish I knew that that was a career because I
Yeah.
probably would have went into, web development and things like that. But by the time I tried it when I was in Atlanta, it was just, you had to have a lot of experience to really thrive in that. So I went back to insurance. So
Yeah.
just what I would tell my younger self is just don't be afraid to try new things. Because I felt like I was just on a path of what people expected me to be on.
Mhm.
Um, I was the first one to graduate from college in our family, and I think the lawyer thing just kind of was an expectation at a certain point. So I just finished my degree, but then I was like, no, I'm not doing it. So
Yeah.
I don't know, just not be afraid of trying new things. I think I stayed in fear for too long and kind of got stuck for too
Yeah.
long. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice though. I often say that to my daughter who's just young and decides like, "Oh, I want to be this when I grow up." I'm like,
Mhm.
like we don't need to decide this right now. Like I changed my mind
Right.
like 15 times. People change
Yeah.
their minds
Yeah.
during their careers. So I always try to encourage her, like, not to, just do something now, like think that you have to do something because you thought at 11, that's what you
Hmm.
should do,
Yeah.
and have an open mind. So, but I'm sure that you felt pressure too, being the first to graduate, and
Yeah.
there's definitely pressure there.
Yeah. And just having to find my own way because, typically when a person goes to college and they have family members that's already been, you get that guidance and, kind of like that mentorship. They kind of help you guide, make decisions, and
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I kind of like had a trial and error, make decisions on
Yeah.
what path to take. So
Yeah. Well, you're not alone.
I-
It made you who you are today. That's not a
yeah.
bad. Well, Tracee, I appreciate you so much taking the time out today to share, share your career, share a lot of personal anecdotes, and I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. And for the listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on all your favorite streaming platforms as well as YouTube. Thank you.
So thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.